Welcome to the Sim Madden League Top 10. Your podcast for the best of the best around the SML. Now, here's your host, I Got the Meats.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to SML Top 10. It's been a while. I think it's been like 6 months, but we're back. We're here. Today we're doing the top 10 disappointments of the cycle, and who better to have with me today than the champ, the Prince of Petty himself. What's going on, Fazz?
Hey, how you doing? Happy to be here.
Yeah, so, I wanted to bring you in for this one because I know you like being petty and wrecking
course.
people's stuff. And you've not shied away from giving it to me, so I was like, hey, who better to have on now today?
Yeah, exactly. It makes it fun, you know?
All right, so let's just go ahead and get into it. And number 10 on our top 10 disappointments of the cycle so far is people trading with Prime. I had this one pretty low because I was like, yeah, people are going to do it. I'm not really disappointed by it at this point, but I know you put it up pretty high.
I feel like I get somewhat of an exemption with some of this because obviously it being my first cycle, I don't have all the same history. So like there's some guys, I know people have harped on Noel quite a bit, but like I was never here when Noel was good. So like it's hard for me to call it a disappointment. Whereas trading with Prime, so I joined this season on literal team draft day. And I think I got like 15 PMs, welcome to the league, what's going on, excited to, play with you, whatever. Also, PS, don't trade with Prime. And it was just like a universal rule, and I'm like, okay, got it, don't trade with Prime. And then sure enough, we get like 4 days into the cycle and people are trading first round picks to Prime. He's getting DK Metcalf. He's getting Stephon Gilmore. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm the only person who listened to the rule of don't trade with Prime.
Prime has figured out a way to overpay for everybody to the point where like, okay, I guess I can do this since Prime's overpaying. And it just doesn't ever work out. I mean, people know not to trade with him, and he still ends up with DK Metcalf for like, I don't know, 2 first-round picks that turned out to be nothing. And Bobby Okereke, which was like, he's okay on the Seahawks, but he's like not special. And I didn't even see the last trade that he did, but he somehow went from pick 32 or 31 to pick 6. I don't know how that happens.
Yeah, I don't even remember what that one is either. It just got to the point where I saw him picking in the top 10. I was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense, sure. Like
Right.
He was just in the Super Bowl, but yeah, I fully expected him to pick in the top 10.
Yeah.
So
Well, we're lucky that he drafted a normal dev defensive tackle, so
yeah.
we're working past that one. All right, number 9 on our most top 10 disappointments of the cycle, the Jaguars and the hump. So I'm talking about the Jaguars and being one of the top teams in the AFC and just not being able to get over that hump. Getting to the AFC Championship a couple of times, AFC Divisional Round a couple of times, dominating Prime for the most part, or at least as far as dominating Prime can go, splitting it pretty even 50-50 if I had to count, and just hasn't been able to get into the Super Bowl.
Yeah, this one was lower for me just because there's still time to rectify it. We still have this season. We probably have one more. And if he can push past that hump, then pretty much all is forgiven if he can get one of the last 2 seasons here. But if not, it'll definitely be a shame for his cycle. I mean, he's played so well, he's dominated teams, he's built that team so well. If there's anybody who's drafted better than anyone in the league, it's probably Bomber. So he's picked X factors in the draft. He's got superstars all up and down the lineup. It's probably just been the quarterback situation is really the only thing that has held him back to this point. I'm rooting for him. I'd like to see him get there, but I definitely do think it's disappointing based on his team and just how good he's been. If he doesn't get one this cycle.
Yeah, I'd really have to put him top 3 in the AFC, and for the fact that it would be 7 seasons in, and he doesn't even have a Super Bowl appearance yet is pretty disappointing to me because yes, there's Dan, yes, there's Prime, but those 2 guys combined only have 2 titles so far, even though they've been to 3 or 4 Super Bowls. So I think this is one that could definitely be a lot higher if nothing happens the rest of the cycle, or it could drop off completely if they do get over that hump.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, our next disappointment, number 8, we have Future Empire and his whole cycle. He came into this cycle being like a guy that last cycle that was winning almost the most regular season games every single season, and he kind of had a reputation for being a folding chair in the playoffs. I think he might have won one playoff game last cycle, but to go from being top 3 in regular season wins last cycle to borderline top 10 this cycle, I've just seen a lot of regression out of him that I don't like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is another one for me. Again, this being my first cycle, I haven't seen anything different, so it was a little tougher for me to grade. But looking strictly at the teams, at the rosters, he has a ton of firepower on that Raiders team. Obviously, Ruggs is a freak show. He's got I think he has 2 97 or 99 overall running backs. So if you ever somewhat stop one of them, he can just sub the other one out and terrorize you with him. So he's had good regular seasons. Every now and then he looks like he could break out and go a little further, but to this point he just hasn't challenged any of the top dogs. He's beaten Dan, I think, twice in the regular season, and that's out of around 14 meetings to this point. And then obviously in the playoffs, I think he beat Paulie last season, but I don't think he's won any other playoff games. He just hasn't seemed to be able to put himself into that top tier area, which in the AFC is really only Prime, Dan, and Bomber. Nobody else has been able to challenge them to this point.
So I've got future for the cycle, not counting the current season, 54 and 42, and then 2 and 4 in the playoffs. That's the 8th most wins in the regular season, but last cycle he was 3rd in regular season wins, 105 and 47. So that's
a big difference.
Pretty dramatic drop off. That was 69% win percentage last year. Nice. To just compared to 56 win percentage this year. So there's been a big drop off. I don't know what it is. I think kind of an ongoing thing we're going to have tonight is that just some of the OGs that used to be really good, your Lawyers, your Grahams, your Futures, just kind of have fallen off in the last year or so. All right, number 7 on our top 10 disappointments list is me, so I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, I think this one just boils down to, for me, the potential of what the Cardinals could be. The Cardinals are a team that you take because, to me, their offense could be borderline near unstoppable. Kyler Murray is busted. He's got the escape artist. He's unbelievably fast, and he doesn't have, at least when I've used him, he doesn't have that tendency that Lamar has. It feels like EA kind of tried to balance Lamar by making his passing way worse than his ratings. I feel like Kyler doesn't have that. He doesn't miss, easy passes. He can bomb the ball downfield. I feel like Kyler Murray is near unstoppable. It's very easy to dev running backs in this game. And, they start with very good receivers. Isabella is one of those really bad in real life, but really good in Madden guys. We were talking about Christian Kirk before we started recording. He's, very talented. You can generally turn him into something. And then obviously DeAndre Hopkins you start out with, who's a beast. And to me, it's just, you made Super Bowl season 1. It didn't go so hot. I know what that's like. And then, I think you said you'd be back, and unfortunately we just haven't really seen that. It hasn't been, really many deep playoff runs since then. The offense hasn't really grown. Obviously, you've turned Simmons into a freak show, but the defense has been good, not great. I just think it's one of those things where, based off of the season 1 expectations, it just hasn't been able to return to that, that tier of success since then. And I think that, with the Cardinals, we probably all expected just a little more and some better runs with that team built for what they are.
I think I really benefited early in the cycle from having a team that was honestly kind of win now in Madden. Obviously not in real life, but win now in Madden. Yeah. With the rookie Simmons and Kyler on a second-year rookie contract. And I think I benefited from a lot of guys having teams that were not quite win now. You, for example, I know I beat you in the playoffs that year with a very old Vikings team.
My boy Kirk.
And I think what really has hindered me is not improving and having everybody else's teams catch up. I'd say my team is still better now than it was, but everybody else has caught up to the point where everybody is win now. I mean, everybody's got a 90-plus running back, it seems like. Everybody's got a quarterback that can throw the ball 75 yards. In terms of historically, last cycle, I won the most regular season games. Number 1, 115 and 29 in the regular season. That was through 9 seasons, 29 losses. This cycle so far, through 6 seasons, I've already lost 30 games. At 65 and 30, which is still like not anything to be like, oh, that's terrible. Like,
sure.
It's still a respectable. It's 7th in wins so far, so it's like still respectable. I don't know. I'm kind of disappointed in my last couple of seasons as I've just kind of been skating into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think part of it too is, I mean, anytime you talk about anybody NFC West, you have to factor in division.
Yeah, that's true.
You know,
I mean,
having the extra competition. I mean, you dump RD, like you're already looking at guaranteed losses per season. And honestly, like Tiny's nobody to sleep on either. Like I know that, you know, he just kind of gets his cheeks clapped in the division season after season. But like, if he were to move divisions, it wouldn't, you know, look the same way that it does for him.
I have to agree with that. And Tiny will still come away with a couple wins here and there in the division.
For sure.
He's beaten me twice. I saw he just beat Dump the other day. I don't know if he's beaten RD, but I feel like he's been close.
He plays RD very tight, which is better than, you know, like 95% of the league. Whereas, like, I just get on the field and Spam Akers just stomps me into submission, and it's just an ugly scene. Tiny somehow figured out a way to, you know, not get crushed by him.
There's definitely something to be said about divisions and everybody playing closer than they maybe should if they weren't, just because of how
me and Mike.
They were. Right. So, speaking of divisions that just rail you, let's move on. Number 6, we have the Three Stooges of Kansas City. So, here we go. We got maybe the most talented team in the division, or I mean in the league coming in. Arguably still one of the top 5 most talented, and an absolutely killer receiving core for some reason. And they just can't win at all. And you know, I don't want to include Spooky in this because I love him, but the way he came in and lost his first 2 games, albeit on like Middle East internet, but whatever, was just disheartening, because I was like, okay, maybe the Chiefs have a chance, and they just absolutely have not yet.
I think you could probably call this the 2.5 Stooges, but it doesn't fly just as well. You know, it doesn't roll off the tongue the same way Three Stooges does. So, you know, Spooky's gotten a pretty bad draw. Obviously, when you start the cycle, KC is like, you know, top 1, 2, maybe at worst team. You know, best quarterback in the game. Tyreek is a freak. You've got pieces on defense. You have to build the defense a little bit, but you have pieces that you can still do something. To this point, thanks to ZZ, and then included in this was my rank of just Raiders return, which was another top 10 disappointment for me. You know, those two have just run this team into the ground so badly that, you know, by the time Spooky gets to it, it's near irredeemable. So, you know, hopefully when he gets off, you know, the Sand People internet, it goes a little better for him, and he can start to use Mahomes to his abilities. But, you know, there's really no defending what ZZ and Raider did to this team. To come away with, like, you know, basically no wins. I don't think any playoff appearances with that Kansas City team is just borderline. Like, I can't really understand it. It doesn't make any sense in my head. So
you would think that a roster that good would carry somebody, but even ZZ, who has made the playoffs before, came in for the first 50 games of the cycle and went 21-33 with this roster. Didn't make the playoffs. And had to step out of the league not long after. And then, as you alluded to, Raider came back. He won 4 games with this team. That's not counting this season, which they're 1-9. So okay, he won 5 games with this team, and it's like 5-45, something like that. That's incredibly bad, especially when you have a wide receiver core that looks like theirs does. They've got 95 overall Tyreek Hill with 97 speed, so he slowed down.
Who's regressed to 97 speed.
Oh yeah. They've got a 92 overall, 99 speed Mecole Hardman, and a 23-year-old 91 overall, 97 speed Quinston Yates, who just had like 500 catches last season. And they still have like N'Keal Harry and a couple guys behind him. So it's like those top 3 wide receivers alone, all with 97 plus speed. There's no reason you should be throwing for less than like 5,000 yards a season. They're just gonna outrun people. Even if you just throw them on a drag, they'll just wiggle their way through there.
I'll never understand it. And not only was it like losing games, but it was like how they lost too. So like ZZ was just a failure to adapt. Like you just knew if you played your cornerbacks 50 yards off the line of scrimmage, you'd still make a play on the ball because he wasn't going to throw it before 50. With Raider, it was just pick after pick after pick, and then videos for all the picks of why this shouldn't have been a pick despite throwing into quadruple coverage. In real life this never would have happened. So just like the way that the losses were. I mean, to throw like 77 interceptions with Patrick Mahomes, the most broken passer I've ever seen, it's baffling.
We are 10 games into this season. Mahomes has a 55% completion rate, 54 rating, 9 touchdowns, and 40 interceptions through 10 games.
40 interceptions through 10 games.
Which I think honestly is lower rate than he was throwing earlier.
Yeah, like I think that was actually improvement.
And then, like I said, I don't like including Spooky in this, but he came in and has lost by a combined. He's 0-2 with the combined score of 68-16 to 2 5-5 teams. So it's like hard to say that we're going to see any big improvements here.
Yeah, I think it's just not the cycle for Kansas City. They cannot wait for new ownership in Madden 22.
Yeah, and then you want to throw in, they're in arguably the worst division too, because you've got Future, who we've already mentioned, but can win 10 games. You've got Dan, who's probably already won 100 games, and then
half of them with Travis Kelce.
Right. and then you've got, you had QB for the first or second season, and then DW, who's not been QB but can still win 9 or 10 games if he has a good season. So that's a really tough division as well. Speaking of that division, number 5 on our list is only 1 title for the Broncos so far. And, I mean, we said it. I mean, it must be a curse of the best regular season teams just don't do well in the playoffs, because don't get me wrong, Dan does well in the playoffs. He's 11-5 this cycle in the playoffs, but only has 1 title to show for it. He's number 1 in regular season wins, 87-9, which is like damn close to best win percentage all time. And I don't know how he's only gotten 1. Yeah, okay, he lost to Dookie because he fat fingered. Okay, I don't know what he was doing in the run commit menu anyway, but that's a different story.
That's doubly disappointing.
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
Dan is currently coming into this last season 2nd all time in win percentage, only behind Dookie.
We need to put an asterisk on that. That's brutal.
Oh, don't worry, I already did.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I mean, this one, hurts on disappointment on a couple levels for me, just because of how the 1 title came. This should be a 0 titles for the Broncos, and he should probably be number 1 or 2 on the list. But I guess I was feeling charitable. But yeah, I mean, if you look at the AFC, so we've had QB represented the AFC in season 1, and then after season 1, I think every season it's been Prime and Dan, or Prime or Dan.
That sounds correct. I don't have that written down, but that sounds right.
Yeah, I don't think there's been anybody else. I think it was pretty much Dan early, and then Prime's been in the last 2. So yeah, only 1 title is a killer. Obviously he beat me with an incredible comeback, which gave him a great win. But then after that, he got kind of curb stomped by RD. which I don't think anybody saw coming. I think when DW did his polls, I think like 2 people voted for RD to win, and it was like Mike and NYT. So, that was definitely an upset and, a win you would expect for the Broncos. Obviously, the fat finger on Dookie is brutal because he had that one. Really, it was wrapped up. There was nothing Dookie was going to do. And then after that, he hasn't really been able to get back. And like you said, excluding Dookie, the best win percentage all time, you would really hope for more than one here.
And I mean,
which really could have been 0.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, it should have been 0, honestly.
Yes. Yeah, thanks. You're welcome, Dan.
You're welcome. Yeah, I mean, if you're not counting Dookie, then best win percentages all time, that's Dan. That's ahead of guys like Sunday Squad, who may or may not have gotten removed because we were thinking he was doing some shady stuff. That's ahead of Oshi, who had the best user probably ever. That's ahead of Prime, who by 100 percentage points. That's, I mean, of active players, he's second right now, or he's first ahead of you. Which, I mean, that on itself, 82 and 14, that's impressive too. And Dan is 123 and 16 all time.
That's a wild record.
That's insane. It's almost a 90% win percentage.
Yeah, the man just don't lose until
the playoffs, does something stupid or gets behind early.
Yeah.
All right, so number 4 on our list, back to the OGs. We got Grams. He's I think he prided himself coming in a couple of the seasons early in this cycle and was like, oh, I've never had a losing season in the SML. Well, that has since changed.
Yeah, no doubt. This is a tough one because, again, his division is tough. I mean, it didn't start tough, but it is now. Rowan's kind of found his footing. He's playing very good. Q is a very good player. Big call out from Primer. Clink is better than his SML record has been to this point, but he can still sneak out wins. So that's it's a tough division for Grams, but also like he's personally somebody that I just expected more from. I have a lot of previous history with Grams, playing in Dan's league with him for years. I've been playing against Grams for multiple cycles now. I've seen him go to playoffs, win playoff games, great regular seasons. So when I saw he was like an OG here, I just, naturally expected him to, make some deep playoff runs. He had the Cowboys, which, this is a great cycle to have the Cowboys. The offensive line was already souped up to begin with. You started out with Zeke. Rest of the offense very good. Couple, decent pieces on defense. There's no team excuse there. And it just, it's really mostly just been a letdown. Couple sub 500 seasons. I think his only, real winning seasons have come when he finishes 3rd or 4th the season prior. And he hasn't, really even come close to winning a playoff game either. It's not like they've been, we lost on a last minute field goal. Like most of them have been a pretty convincing loss. So, definitely somebody I've touched on it, on a couple shows previously, but he was definitely somebody I expected bigger things from, just coming in with the history we had, and it's been a tough go for him this cycle.
So Grams is currently 52 and 44 this cycle coming into the season, 0-3 in the playoffs. That's 11th in terms of just raw number of wins. Last cycle he was 6th in wins, so not a huge drop off, but he goes from 90, 53 and 1 last cycle to right now 52 and 44, which is like almost 500. And that's just I think he's had 3 on his way to 4 losing seasons so far, and he's capable of winning. He just won 11 and 5 2 seasons ago, but he then follows that up with the 7 and 9. Right now he's 3 and 6, so not looking great for that one too.
Seems to be very like schedule or matchup dependent. When he gets that first place schedule, things seem to fall off, and when he gets a third place schedule, he then has a great season. So it's been very hit or miss for him.
And I think coming in to this cycle, I think everybody expected him to be the top dog in that division. Obviously, we did not have Clink at the time. We did not have QP, but we did have Rowan, and I think people put Rowan below Grams pretty consistently, and I don't
Yeah.
have like an idea of where he's finished, but it's been pretty 50-50. I mean, through that whole division. I mean, he's got guys that can beat him. All three of those guys can beat him. He can also beat all three of those guys. He just hasn't consistently.
Yeah.
And I back in Madden 18, I want to say, he was the Dolphins. He was making AFC championships left and right, almost every season. I don't believe that he ever made it to a Super Bowl in this league, but you know, he was there, and he was that contender guy. He's kind of got that OG name that's like, okay, he's gonna be a hard out no matter what.
Yeah.
And he just hasn't been this cycle for the most part. 0-3 in the playoffs, and it's just been pretty disappointing. All right, number 3 on our list, we have Paulie and his team building. So let's right off the bat, let's say, Paulie, this isn't about your winning ability. We know you can win. We know you're better than you say that you are. And
you're not fooling anybody.
No. So we're just extremely disappointed with your winning ability. And this was, I believe, your idea, so let's talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. So this is, you know, again, like you specified, this is not, you know, winning record related. You know, Paulie has mostly dominated that division. I think, you know, 1 or 2 seasons he didn't win. You know, he's won some playoff games. He's always finished with a very good record. He honestly, I think, has, now that Prime has started to play better against Bomber, I think he probably has the most recent success against Prime. So, you know, it's definitely not, you know, winning related. It's more just the fact that, you know, he likes to harp on people for having good teams. I know that's his big knock against Dan, despite passing on the Broncos for the Dolphins. To me, it's more just the fact that, you know, like we talked about earlier, you know, most teams at this point are all win now. You've had multiple drafts, you've had seasons to develop players, you've been able to make trades. Pretty much everyone, with the exception of a couple, have really improved their teams. And, you know, we have a couple rosters that are just flat out scary. The Dolphins should have been one of those rosters, and they are not. So you come into this cycle, you have Tua on the, you know, rookie contract. You have, I think, either the most cap space in the NFL or at least the second most. You have a ton of draft picks, and young players just littered throughout your team. And to me, I feel like Paulie has really not done anything with pretty much any of it. He did end up with an X-Factor quarterback, but it's because he traded Tua, and then, you know, took advantage of you know, everyone's favorite charitable owner in Figs. So, you know, he did end up with the X-Factor quarterback. His running back situation is an always hurt Breida and Nyheim Hines, who I think he traded the first-round pick for, which is just pretty terrible.
To Prime.
Yes, to Prime, of course. So, you know, back to number 10 there. And, you know, there's not a ton of studs on defense. He ended up with Clowney due to some potentially shady circumstances with Coop. So, you know, he just really hasn't, you know, he didn't draft any crazy good players. He hasn't really developed anyone. And, you know, I just think that the Dolphins are a team that, if you played your cards the right way, could have been the scariest team in Madden 21. And it just has not been that way. And Paulie is winning because he's a good player and not because he did well with his team.
Yeah, you mentioned the Nyheim Hines trade, and I almost forgot that he gave up so much for that. But Hines, I don't understand that trade because he had Breida, and Breida's been the lead back almost the whole time. Hines comes in, and he's, you know, he gets decent carries every season, but he's only carried the ball over 100 times, 3 times in 7 seasons, counting this one. And it's like, why trade that much for a guy that is only going to run the ball for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns? I don't see it. You could draft a guy that high and get twice the production, if not 4 times the production.
Yep.
And then we mentioned Tua. I can't really fault him for that because he did end up with a better quarterback out of it. I think the development was not there for Tua, but it turned out to be okay. Tolbert, for some reason, signed a really cheap contract for an X-Factor quarterback. He's got 5 years, about $100 million, which is like ridiculous for a quarterback.
Yeah.
Only $20 million a year. But I'm looking at this depth chart, and I'm like, outside of the corner room and the wide receiver room, I'm struggling to find guys under 26 years old, which
Hmm.
this late in the cycle, okay, there's more of an emphasis on veterans, but you still want to have those young guys in there. And if I had to count non-wide receivers, I'd say he's got a handful, maybe 5 guys under 24 or under. And it's like, I don't know what's going on. You're investing in a 33-year-old Jadeveon Clowney who's getting like $40 million a year. You've got a 30-year-old Juwan Bentley who I think started on the team, if I'm correct, but he's only an 84. He's at 30. You got a 29-year-old Scotty Miller on the 84. You got a 29-year-old Preston Williams on the 83. The Devin Duvernay, I believe, was a trade. That was a good trade for him. It turned out to be a good one. 94 speed, 90 overall on the 28 right now.
That one was a good move.
But now you look at the running back rooms. You got 29 Naeem Hines, who, like we said, hasn't done much. You've got a 31-year-old Matt Breida, 96 speed, sure, but I mean, you know how running backs are after 30, could get injured at any second.
And he's been getting injured.
Oh, yeah. And then linebacker room is just ew. I mean, he's got 90 overall Jerome Baker, which, cool, but he was on that team to start with. So you're developing your players. But then you've got one guy above 80 overall outside of Baker, and you've got 10 linebackers on the team. It's just, it leaves a lot to be desired. Byron Jones started with the team, I believe. And Noah, I'm going to struggle to say this, but I'm going to try.
Iganagabi, I believe.
Igbahen, whatever, I tried.
Close enough.
He's a 26-year-old, so he's real young coming in. But he's cornerback too, normal overall, only 82. And I don't remember, he was on the Dolphins to start, so it's like he's been on this team for 7 seasons now, and you've only devved him up to an 82 normal.
Yeah.
It's just if Paulie was a good team builder, this team might win a Super Bowl. Yeah, this definitely could have been one of those teams that, you know, you look at, you know, like a Bombers team or like a Primes team, where you line up and you look at, you know, where do I want to attack? And it's like, well, nowhere. I don't want to attack anywhere. Like, nothing looks appealing. And, you know, they could have been scary on offense, but, you know, it's really just become a team that's just middle of the road. And I think that's a shame based on what they could have been. Yeah, it's like the Dolphins are just avoid Clowney, avoid Baker, and throw it to the slot corner, and suddenly you're going to throw for 400 yards.
Exactly.
Now, I do have to give Paulie credit. He's been winning games with this team. His defense is really good against the pass, 3rd right now. And his offense, while not as good as his defense, is still really good. You know, it's borderline top 10. So, you know, there's something to be said about it. Paulie, next cycle, focused on the team building, and I think you're going to win a lot more games.
Or take a team that doesn't need to be built. Take somebody that the work is already done, and all you have to do is maintain it. That would be my suggestion.
I'm going to disagree with that, because I think team building is more important because if you're going to maintain, it's really hard to maintain a team. You know, you can lose a guy that's a 90 overall on a rookie contract. How are you going to replace him? You're not for the same price, at least, especially if you're tight with cap. I think maintaining might honestly be harder than building.
Fair.
All right, moving on to number 2. We have the 49ers in the playoffs. And I know this has been a discussion in chat pretty much every playoffs, because I don't think Dump has missed the playoffs yet.
I don't think so either.
And I know he likes to give me crap for, you know, not being able to win in the playoffs, but hey, I beat him in the playoffs, and he has 1 win in the playoffs so far.
This is your time to shine here. The floor is yours.
Yeah, like, I'm not going to put a target on my back. I still play the 49ers again this season, and I don't want them to drop 50 or 60 on me.
Yeah,
but
smart.
Listen, I mean, Dump, you have to agree with us. It's hugely disappointing when you go look at that 49ers roster and then say, well, they've done absolutely nothing in the playoffs. They're 1-6 in the playoffs. And it's not like you've been going up against really hard teams. Yeah, okay, the NFC is always a tough first round. Maybe you got screwed into playing QP in the first round, which Lord knows I can't beat QP. So you can't blame him for that one. But then you got guys that you should be beating, which I don't remember off the top of my head the 49ers matchups other than that Washington game that was just frankly embarrassing in the playoffs. But you know, you've always got a couple guys making the playoffs in the NFC as a wild card when you do win the division that you should be beating, and I don't know if there's just something off, because last cycle Dump was good in the playoffs. I'm not gonna say he was great. He didn't make a Super Bowl, but he was at least 500 in the playoffs. And this cycle just hasn't shown it. I think he'd have to win the Super Bowl twice in a row to get back to 500 in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's the playoff conversation is one that I think is interesting and might get harped on a little more than it probably should. Just because, I mean, when you get to a playoff matchup, you're playing somebody who's very good. It's pretty rare that you end up with a playoff matchup where you're like, all right, like the guy I'm playing doesn't really deserve to be here. Like, you're always playing a good team, you're playing a good player. And it's the NFL, so it's a one game and out. You don't get the chance to play somebody in a best of 3, a best of 5. It's much easier to lose, in the playoffs, and then you do it twice, 3 times, then all of a sudden the conversation starts. With that said, this Niners team is loaded, and we're talking like, I think you said it was what, 1 win? He has 1 win in the playoffs.
He's 1-6.
Yeah, 1-6. At some point you'd like to see that, even if it inches closer to 500, it becomes much more respectable. 1-6 is brutal, because I don't think he's had any first round buys, which means that he's losing in the first round pretty much every single season, and that's usually after winning probably the toughest division in our league, and it's with a team that is just, it's stacked. I mean, Edens he's straight up busted. Kittle is a freak. Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, both superstars. And that's before getting to the defense, which is the strongest part of the team. This is the team that's loaded, that should have made a Super Bowl run by now. If not, probably should have won one. And we're talking about a team that can't get out of the first. So I think when you're looking at something that drastic, it absolutely is a disappointment for what this team is, and honestly how good Dump's been. Again, I wasn't here last cycle, but you said that he was good in the playoffs. I saw his games against Dan. I watched a couple of the streams last cycle, so we know he's capable. And sadly, this cycle it just hasn't happened.
So I looked it up real fast. Dump is the only player in the SML that wins at least 60% of their regular season games, and has less than 2 playoff wins.
Wow.
Everybody else that has at least a 600 winning percentage has won at least 2 games, and that includes a guy like Royce, who went 2-3. That includes Dom, who's 5-3 for some reason because he plays the CPU every year.
You're welcome again.
That includes Paulie, who people have given crap for losing in the playoffs, but he's 3-6.
Yep.
That includes QB Stud, who went 4-0, but only was here for 1 season.
Didn't Figs go 1-1?
Figs is 1-1 in the playoffs. That is the lowest best winning percentage on the list. And you got even Matt, who went 2-1 in the playoffs, who has a 540 winning percentage. So the level of production has just dropped off completely in the playoffs for the 49ers at a rate that nobody else tends to be dropping off. You expect your playoff win percentage to be lower, but not that much lower.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that says enough for that. Moving on, our top disappointment of the cycle this season, Prime, you're going to love this one, is the Dookie era as a whole. It's
the whole thing, every bit of it.
Faz, this was your number 1. I'll let you take it.
Yeah, so, I don't know who you want to put the blame on for this, whether we want to put the blame on QB Stud for a recommendation, whether we want to put the blame on allowing QB to have a recommendation, whether we want to put the blame on Prime for listening, or for us for not rioting after like day 2. There's a lot of blame to be shared because the Dookie era was bad, whether it be the chat antics, him making everyone hate Lamar Jackson. I like Lamar Jackson, but I feel like I have to dislike him now because of Dookie. The Chicken Nugget song, whatever it was, the Dookie era was a disaster. He was a giant pain in chat. He thought he was God, which was something else. The gameplay was suspect at best. And then sadly, he walks away with the highest SML win percentage and a Simbardi. Thanks again, Dan, for that one. That was a tough night. So yeah, I think no matter how you slice it, the Dookie era as a whole has to be the top, biggest disappointment of this cycle. Maybe SML history. I don't know. I haven't been here that long, but I feel like this one would be hard to top.
And just in terms of eras, I have to put this one number 2. The SML had a good season and a half where Prime was like rarely around because real life and stuff, and it was just like, oh my god, I think the league is dying. And then you got the Dookie era, which is like you pop in chat, oh my god, I think the league is on fire. And it's like
the amount of times I would open chat and then just immediately close the app was astounding.
I'm willing to bet that he had like 55% of the messages that entire time that he was there.
And then Tiny was like 54.
Right.
And then the rest of us were 1% of all just like, dude, what is going on?
And you can say what you want about Dookie, but hey, he got some wins in there, and he went 37-4 with the Buccaneers, who without Dookie have been 13-42. So he was winning games. The way in which he was winning them might have been a little suspect, and then he lucked into a Super Bowl because somebody has larger than life fingers. It was a dark time for the SML. I think the chat atmosphere has come a long way since that whole thing. I think, I'm kind of going to defend Prime here. He's a good guy. He always gets one or two guys that he's got a soft spot for. And he's like, oh, we can change them. We can convince them to settle down. And so far, it's just not worked out. His head's in the right spot. But I think at this point he's learned that when you got a guy and you say something to him one time and nothing changes, he's probably not going to change after the 5th time you say something.
I think the issue for sure was just how long we held on, because it became pretty obvious pretty quick that the only time Dookie was tolerable was when he just wasn't talking in chat. Because it came in and like he was kind of fun the first few days, and it was like, okay, I can see how this could be a good time. Like he's going to definitely create some conversation. He was a good Madden player. There's really no way around that. He knew what he was doing. Again, maybe sus in some areas, but you have to be good to get to the point where what you're doing is shady. But then I think after you tell him once and it's like, okay, we didn't see much change. You tell him twice, and maybe he like would drop out of chat for like a few days and he like wouldn't say too much, and it's like, oh, maybe he's getting under control, and then he would be back with a vengeance. And it was like, okay, never mind, like this guy's got to go. And then we held on for way too long. The only thing that wasn't a disappointment with the Dookie era was watching him guarantee a win against Bomber, and then Bomber clapped his cheeks badly. That was fun. I was glad we held on long enough for that, but
Good times.
but the rest of it, nope, no good, no bueno.
Yeah, Dookie's a nice guy. I don't think he was a culture fit in the least. Dookie,
No, he was
I know
not.
you still watch some SML stuff. So
Probably all.
if you see this, Dookie, please don't. I know I gave you my
suck.
number. If you want to talk Ravens, let's talk Ravens. But yeah, just I felt like Dookie just got on my, like, I'm a Ravens fan. He was a Ravens fan, and I'm just like, why am I arguing with you about my own team like more than we're not arguing? It was just it was
an event.
That was a time.
Yeah, that was like, again, I really like Lamar Jackson. I'm a Lamar Jackson fan. I hope that he improves in areas that he needs to improve. Like, I love Lamar Jackson, and there were a lot of days where I really questioned that fandom.
You can't see it, but I have a pop Popo Funk or whatever they're called of Lamar Jackson. I just showed up to the camera. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it was honestly better for the league in the long run, because I think it showed us that we're not perfect. We still have things we can work on. And I think that was like the beginning of the second purge of cheese, where we just tried to shut it down. And we did change a few rules because of Dookie.
The second only good that came out of it outside of the Bomber game. We'll take it. You know, sometimes things need to get dark before you see the light, I guess.
Oh, yeah. All right, 45 minutes. We're taking a while to do this, but I think that about does it for us. You got anything else to add?
I don't think so. I think we've pretty much blasted pretty much everyone equally at this point. So,
all right. Here's my last word to everybody on this list. There are 10 people on this list. 12 if you count Kansas City. You still have time to get yourself off this list. We have at least a season and a half left, depending on when Madden releases, but we haven't heard anything about Madden yet. Get yourself off the list. Stop trading with Prime. Make trading with Prime number 1 by the end of the season. Number 2,
there
maybe.
It is.
And, you know, don't get discouraged when you see yourself on this list. Use it as a motivation. I want to see myself popping up in a Super Bowl highlight video of me talking shit about the Vikings or something.
There you go. I'm ready for it.
All right, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you next time.